L'Oréal and Vista Allegra 200 Years Luxury Brands Summit proudly present. Our third debate, retail. The challenges of retail for the next generation. We are pleased to announce our speakers and Kim, IDEO partner at IDEO Europe. Alain Brun, duty-free CEO. And Filippo Bianchi, BCG Fashion and Luxury Emissa Head, MD and Senior Partner at BCG. Debate conducted by João Barbosa AD CEO and Felipe Gonçalves Sogrup Board Member.
You want to start or should I?
You start.
Okay. So we improvised some questions that I'm going to read, okay? But Anne, I would like to start with you. And I know that you've been involved in analyzing customer behavior, especially about Gen Z. And I think the first question would be, how is that evolving? And specifically in retail, what changes are you noticing?
Yeah, that effusive customer is the number one question I think we get about retail. How do we attract more Gen Z customers, future generation? And the truth is, they are the most complex. So there's no singular answer, and there's definitely not a singular profile, right, in terms of how you would describe that generation. But I think one of the biggest shifts that we are seeing is a sense of dichotomy. They are one of the most connected and yet feel the most isolated from a community perspective. They have grown up in a digitally native context, and they are the first generation to grow up in that context. And I think it's really fascinating when you start to look at the way that they have experienced the world and actually the things that retailers and brands, especially from a luxury perspective, can learn from these unique sets of contexts that that particular generation has grown up in. And so some of the shifts around retail, the biggest kind of, aspects, and you covered a lot of this, right? Which is one, trends are trends. They are not static. And so brands need to be far more dynamic and adaptive. And in order to do that, they need to understand customers better than ever before. So the expectations of this customer base is far greater. And we need brands and retailers to be far more responsible. They need to be inclusive, but also special, right? And make you feel special in terms of access. And so taking all of these things together, I think, one of the things that we really need to focus on is if the sets of expectations are that varied, then what are the different ways that retailers can really kind of deeply understand the motivations and needs of these people behind that categorization of Gen Z, and in order to really kind of get to the root of what are their motivations, right? And how do the values and the missions that my brand ultimately stands for really speaks to and helps align with, right, the values that customers have.
And it's interesting you're talking about this because we have different generations, different geographies, and the way how to segment it. Sorry for my inconvenient jokes, but there is, when people ask me about the next generation, I say, you know what? The next generation is going to be an elder generation because, the demographic pyramid is inverting.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we forget that part of the pyramid is not being considered. But coming back to the question that I was trying to ask you is, how do you, with so many different geographies and so many differences between those geographies, how do you segment those generations within those geographies, particularly retail-wise, which is more or less what we're talking about.
Yeah, and definitely we're dealing with a much more globally connected market, right? And I think that adds additional complexity. But I have a controversial thought, which is I think age or generational segmentation is extremely unhelpful. It could be one of the inputs or one of the ways, right, or one of the facets through which you view your customer base. But ultimately, again, we are people at the end of the day, and people are extremely rich and diverse. And just because one 25-year-old in Lisbon and one 25-year-old in Seoul are not necessarily going to share the same interests, but the same could be true of two people who live and grew up in a very similar context in the same place most of their lives. And so I think it's really important to couple that sense of age, generation, even locale, with far more layered understanding through psychographics and also deeply understanding, again, like motivations. What is it that people, why is it that people do what they do, to your point? How do they feel when they are, exploring or making choices around whether it is how they engage with a brand or, that thing that they've always wanted to buy. Everything has to fulfill a particular set of needs, and I think everyone, the different facets are really important to consider. And so I think you have to couple quantitative, typical marketing research, which I think does help in understanding the actual outcomes or the outputs at the end of a customer buying journey, with the inputs around, well, how did they get there? What did they feel when they were exploring? And actually, who did they engage with in that process that really helped them, arrive at those sets of decisions to enrich your understanding of really who they are and what motivates them?
Yeah. Well, Filippo, I was about to ask you, I wanted to ask some questions to Filippo, but he said, hey, I'm coming from a big consulting company. I don't answer questions, I present slides. So, Filippo, the stage is all yours, and thank you so much. You go ahead.
I will only start if you answer one question for me. Was it us with that research about retail trends? Was it BCG?
No. Don't. I would never do that.
At least that.
No.
At least that. Okay.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Great. No, yeah. Unfortunately, being a consultant, I can only talk to PowerPoints. That gets very frustrating for my wife, as you can imagine.
Oh, call mine.
Yeah. Well, when I asked my wife for advice, she said, what do you want from me? I mean, you get a good night's sleep, which is way more than I'm going to get. We've got a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So anything is a holiday. Jokes aside, I think, so one small piece. I am going to try and talk mostly about the very top of the pyramid of the luxury consumer and the implication of serving those. Our best estimate is that there are 400 million of people out there that buy luxury goods. Our best estimate is 500,000 of those make 10% of the market. So each one of them is worth 350 average ones. And 4% of people make 40% of the market. So, serving well that 500,000 folks, or if you want that 20 million folks is phenomenally important. When you think of those, at the end of the day, there are three things to keep in mind. One is, as we've heard a million times today, a product is a necessary bit of the equation, is not a sufficient bit of the equation. So, having a beautiful the world in which a beautiful product will eventually find its way to the heart of the consumer and hopefully their wallet too. That's kind of gone. The hybridation of product, experience, and service is there, has been there for a while, ever since brands started mingling with distribution. Really, I see that more important than ever and gaining a ton more importance. Two is, we were force-fed online for a few years, thanks to COVID. There is a fundamental allergy to it. That's also I believe they're there to stay, and for actually a very, very, very simple reason, is that the experience is not differentiated enough. So we asked a panel of, again, very, very wealthy individuals that spend 350,000 euros per head per annum every year in luxury goods, which is an interesting piece of change. What is their level of satisfaction when they buy luxury products or services versus mass products or services, both online and offline? And, offline, the equation works. They are, on average, twice as satisfied with the experience with the luxury brand than with the mass brand. And that resonates, right? You walk into the temple of a luxury brand versus you walk into your neighborhood supermarket. The level of engagement, especially if you're a VIC client, is drastically different. Online, this is the same. Actually, the cheap folks do it better because they're more sophisticated, they've got bigger volumes, they've got a much bigger emphasis on technology. But in reality, there is very little difference between a luxury site, a website, and Amazon. And if anything, Amazon is better. So, two is, as much as we like to talk about online, it's there to stay, fulfills a piece. It's not going to take over. Now, it's not going to take over when it comes to transacting, to sales. But also there, thinking in terms of hybridization of the journey. A pure offline journey doesn't exist anymore. A pure online journey is trivial, but anything in between is the name of the game. And last but not least, the level of attention that needs to be there. I mean, whenever you talk about distribution of luxury products, you're basically talking about serving two different customer bases at the same time in an only partially different way, and to a large extent through the same media and channel. And it's a very difficult exercise of balancing. But any brand out there will serve pretty much through the same stuff that 500,000 people, which is the very, very, very top layer you see, 600,000 people, 0.1% of the population, making 20% of revenues, 213 billion euros of luxury. That is what brands are natively obsessed with. It tends to be a very analog type of business. It's based on one-to-one personal attention going through the expert hands of the client service advisor, right? The trick is how to percolate some of that exquisite service and experience to the other layer that ultimately make 80% of revenues, and where going one by one personally and by hand is just never going to happen. So before you said personalization, yes, but personalization at scale, more tricky, because my butcher will know my mother. He'll struggle to recognize me because I only go there once a month.
True.
That's it.
Mic drop.
Alan, moving to the duty-free topic. So most of them have luxury commercial spaces. Does it really, why? Do they have to be there? And does it really worth the spend? Because it costs a fortune being there?
Yes, the answer is yes, obviously. Just maybe to give a little bit of element of context. So I'm running Portugal duty-free. Not duty-free. I saw somebody wrote CEO duty-free. I'm not duty-free CEO worldwide, thanks God. But I'm taking care of all the shops we have in our Portuguese airports. We're talking about 10 airports in Portugal and about 36 shops, 11,000 square meters. As some of you know, those airports have been privatized. by a group called VINCI Airports, and we operate airports worldwide. We have 73 airports in the world, and it's about 300 million passengers. So 300 million passengers, it's a lot, knowing that most of them are clients. I'm the lucky one in the room because I don't have to look for clients. Clients are coming to me. Right? If I would do the same exercise as you did with TikTok, and if I ask you who has ever been in an airport, everybody has been in an airport. Okay? And who has ever been in an airport shop? 94% of the people who enter an airport, according to a recent survey, have been in an airport shop. In our airport, it's 100%. We make sure that after the security, you go through the walkthrough. Then the question would be, how many of you have ever bought in an airport? I'm not going to ask you, but I'm sure that most of you have bought in an airport. So yes, it definitely does the investment. As a matter of fact, there was an article 2 days ago in the Portuguese press saying that ANA, so the VINCI Airports Portuguese operator, invests this year 120 million in the airports. But they were talking about the operational part. They were not talking about the shops. So those 120 million, does it worth the investment? Long term, yes, because it's contractual, it's for security, customer service, etc. Do we have a return on investment? Not very much. Okay, we have no choice. But I did invest, on the top of those 120 million, I did invest this year 34 million, only in Portugal. Okay? Are we going to have a return on investment? Definitely yes. Some of the refurbishment are already finished, and in most of the shops, the 36 shops we have, it's about 15% increase of sales where we had strong refurbishment. So it definitely does worth it. For the last 10 years, the airport business, I don't know if you remember, but 20 or 30 years ago, the question was always, oh, am I going to get some duty-free product in the airport? It's not the case anymore. Okay, it's more about what I'm going to get. Okay, what are the options? What are the promotions, etc. So we know that it's important to develop our retail area in an airport. When you manage an airport, you have two sources of revenue, either what is linked to the airlines, but we don't want to put the pressure on the airlines. It's difficult to be an airline. It's difficult to be profitable as an airline. So of course, it's a big part of our revenue because we provide some service to the airlines, which are not free, but we really want to develop the retail part. And retail, obviously, it's about our shop, not only, it's also F&B, et cetera, but at the end of the day, it's a huge return on investment, yes.
And then which luxury distribution models are proving to be more successful?
Sorry?
Which luxury distribution models are proving to be more successful?
In an airport, I mean, we don't have 27 crocodile types like you do.
That's a shame.
It's a shame. It's a shame, but it's complicated enough. I would say we have to simplify it. We have two schemes, right? Either you have the dedicated shop, so with one brand only, or you have the walkthrough. Okay. Yeah. The dedicated shop is very efficient when the airport match your profile of customers. Typically in Lisbon, for example, we don't have very high-end brands. Why? Because the airport is old, it's constrained, there is no space for some of the LVMH, for example, brands to express the way that they usually today and more are expressing themselves, right? But we have some amazing brands. We have some amazing brands with their own shops, which are working very well. Not to mention Longchamp, for example, that we opened a few months ago, and I believe it's performing very well. Why? Because Longchamp is well known in Portugal. So not only we attract the Portuguese passenger, but it also has done a lot in terms of concept, evolution, etc. And it works. But it's not the only one. We have Mont Blanc, we have Hugo Boss, we have Ralph Lauren, etc. And they do work well. But again, every airport has to be studied one by one. You don't do the same. We have, for example, Kansai International in Japan. So there we have all the big brands. We opened the first Dior Cafe in an airport. I mean, first Dior Cafe globally, and it was in an airport, and it was in Kansai. Why? Because we have wealthy Japanese, and we have a lot of very rich Chinese. They love it. That's going to be different if you talk about an airport in Lyon, in Gatwick, in Cabo Verde, which are also airports we manage. Okay. Then there is a second scheme, which are the walkthrough. And this is more complicated. The walkthrough, as I said, everybody has to go through it. So here our challenge is to make sure that you stop, okay? Yeah. And that's an everyday job. We have a lot of tricks to make you stop, to make sure that you're going to grab a basket and put at least maybe some cigarette, and then therefore a port wine or another product, another souvenir from Portugal. At the end of the day, it's for luxury, because we're talking about luxury. I believe it's a beautiful opportunity again to show the brand. We don't have Chanel, but Chanel is our number one perfume and cosmetic product within this walkthrough. We following the refurbishment we had this year, we tried some very high-end perfumes, like from Gucci, 300 to 400 euro a bottle, and it works tremendously. So it's very, very successful. But here again, it's difficult because people are stressed, so you need to make sure that they will stop and they will take the time. But again, who resists to take the last opportunity to buy something from the country which has been very well welcoming them for a couple of days or weeks. Okay? So we have a lot of different kind of passenger, clients, who have different reasons to buy. The businessman, the opportunity to buy a gift, a souvenir for the family which wants to wait in the shop instead of waiting in front of the screen to know where the gate is. This is why we never tell you where the gate is before 30 minutes before you leave, because we want you to stay in our shops. So again, only two schemes, but according to airport, there are always an opportunity for almost all brands to be represented.
Thank you.
And I would like to come back to you, because this is my last question, and then I shut up for good. But I'm a fan of segmentation. And obviously you have been working on that side of the customer analysis, let's put it this way. And how exactly do you advise your clients, and what's the process you follow in terms of getting the right segmentation, especially in distribution channels?
Yeah, I think when it comes to distribution, one of the words that are flown around a lot is omnichannel, right? Filippo, you mentioned it as well, that break in terms of the quality of the online experience, no matter how good your in-person or physical experience may be. I think if there is a break, then in the online experience, it could actually have a real detrimental effect in terms of the holistic experience. So for me, I think, at the end of the day, one of the things that IDEO really advises our clients on is the reality is customers don't care about your channels. They care about the experience, just like they don't care about actually your products. What they care about are the needs that your products actually fulfill. And so when you start to couple those things together, all of a sudden, the concept of channels, or the concept of really meeting a set of customer needs based on the way that you are internally organized, or the way that the organization actually has broken up different aspects of those channels, will naturally create a break in that holistic customer experience that especially Gen Z customers, I would say, have come to expect. The expectations are all the more elevated, right? Because the way that people shop today is not a linear journey. It is not a static journey, right? It doesn't begin here and end there when they decide to buy the thing. Actually, it is much more of an infinite loop. You start with, often everyone starts with information or inspiration gathering, like I have this need. What are the different ways, right, or different kind of options that I have to hand? And actually, especially for Gen Z, that sense of not just inspiration and exploration, but also information is all the more important because this is a generation that has more access to information about each of your brands than ever before, right? And they have so many avenues in order to gain insights into that information. So there are influencers, there are customer reviews, there are just referrals or people recommending something to you. But studies have shown that over 70% of Gen Z will only then make a purchasing decision once they've actually completed their own research about that particular brand or product. So even if they have all these recommendations, they have to go through a circular kind of almost exploration themselves in order to gain confidence that this is the right choice. And I think this is particularly important for luxury, especially not only for the high net worth individuals, right, but also for those customers who are really kind of on a much more aspirational search, because it is not only a decision that is about that purchasing moment, but actually it's about what are the values that the brand actually promotes and how does it align or highlight or elevate the values that I hold really dear. It's also about the quality of the overarching experience, right? So I may actually, people window shop as much online now as far more than they do in store, right? Mm-hmm. And so knowing that, how would you actually, really shift the role of those channels within that circular kind of holistic experience? And I'll give you one provocation, or maybe a couple. And it is provocation because IDEO, when we're advising our clients around really thinking about the future, which is wholly unpredictable, as you say, because there's no data about the future, right? What we do is actually we ask them to look at sort of some of the extreme areas, the extreme edges around customer needs or observations or behaviors, and actually come up with different potential possibilities, right, in order to really radically shift, towards a new way of solving that business or customer challenge that you have. And so, and I think this is an important concept because one provocation I have for you all is, what if the physical store was not a point of sale at all? What if it did not exist in order for the brand or the retailer to simply make a sales transaction? How would you actually, elevate, or how would the experience in store shift? Right? Because if you, what you said, 5,000 years, the role of that physical store has not changed, right? And so we use these provocations not necessarily to say, you must stop from your in-store, your physical store from being a point of sale, but actually it does provocate different possibilities, or at least ask very different set of questions that you perhaps did not think of previously. And I think this is an important point because the truth is physical increasingly, and it is fascinating because you're seeing now an influx of digitally native luxury brands actually now investing in physical. I think that's fascinating because for a long time, brick and mortar is dead. And especially post-COVID, I think now people are really craving that sense of immersion and connection that only physical or physical connections or physical ways of coming together can really support. And so I think the second provocation I have for you all are, what are the experiences or the ways of engaging with your customers in person that simply cannot be replicated online? I think to ask ourselves this question when we're thinking about the roles of some of the traditionally distinctly viewed channels, I think will again help us really think outside the box in terms of the role that those channels can play and the holistic experience that it can really support for people. So I'd love everyone to think about that. If your brand was a person, you wouldn't think, oh, I am going to either choose to simply interact with this person, through this channel or that. You're just going to think, oh, I need to get in touch with so-and-so, and you are going to pick the best possible mode, right, of engaging with that friend that you have. And I think the relationship between brands and also the role of retail has to kind of come in with that same mindset, right? Thinking about it from a person-to-person connection, definitely, leverage that scale. But I think it has to be in-depth, and it has to cover the holistic experience as a whole, and really meet those sets of needs for customers, right? Rather than emphasizing simply on products or the channel in and of itself. I'll leave you with one kind of note, which is Gentle Monster, which is a brand that Heather and I love, and she also talked about it earlier. But it is a South Korean luxury, a newly luxury, emerging kind of eyewear brand. It's only been around for about a decade. They have 6 designers design their eyewear, and they have 60 designers actually design out their in-store experience and the complementary physical touch points that surround it. So that it really kind of elevates the holistic aspect of how people are engaging with that brand. And I think it is it's a real shift that we're starting to see in retail. And these are the types of lenses that we really bring to our clients. How do you actually really not just predict the future, but start to build towards making a future that only your brand can inhabit and only your brand can actually relay and connect with your customers around?
Final one to you, Alan. Speaking on your international experience, what can we steal with pride from other countries or brands to land for our luxury brands in Portugal?
In Portugal, duty free, we're very lucky because we had this partnership with some of the oldest Portuguese brands for decades. And I'm thinking about the port wine. There are many others, but I'm thinking about the port wine industry.
It's a good one.
And for decades, we've been collaborating with the port wine industry, and we have seen how reactive they can be. It represents a pretty big part of our revenue at the airport, because it's not only it's a good product, but they are well-known product, and they are typical good souvenir product. So that's what people want in an airport. And among the years, we have seen how those Portuguese brands have been able to change and to adapt to the offer in terms of quality, price. And I know it's difficult because it's very regulated. You can't do what you want, being a port wine producer. But however, there has been a strong evolution with different kind of product, thinking about port tonic or things like that, and you've been able to work on exclusivity with us, which is also something which is very important for passenger in an airport. They want some exclusive products they find only in an airport. Still don't understand why, but that's something they love. So I think it has been successful. As a matter of fact, when I arrived 2 years ago in Portugal, I was amazed to see how many local Portuguese brands which had a very long history and a nice story to tell that I didn't know. Okay, so I think the Portuguese brand, they have it all to be successful internationally. Maybe the size will be a problem because you need money. Okay, but you have some things that we can't create when we want to launch a brand. You have the history, the story, the quality of the product. You have the right DNA, and I think there is a lot should happen in the next 10 or 20 years for many of the brands we love to work with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.